What's going on, guys? It's me, Zachary Steele, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. Today, I'm going to go over same thing as last week, just some players at each position that I think are worth a look at the waiver wire this week. Really fun week 3. Not so fun for me, a Seahawks fan, but it is what it is. Just as you guys know, name of the game, just making sure your roster gets better each week, one player at a time. So stick around here, and we'll keep doing that throughout the season. So with that, let's get started. So for starters, we'll start with the quarterback position. I think my top 3 guys here are guys that it's just kind of time to admit that they've actually been really good so far this season. Number 1 being Kirk Cousins. The Vikings have a legitimate argument they should be 3-0 this season. Kirk Cousins is playing really well. He just dealt my Seahawks defense a really embarrassing loss. And he's got 2 elite receivers. He saw an emergence of Tyler Conklin, and he showed that he could do it without Dalvin Cook on the field. So we know that Kirk Cousins is going to be enough to make this offense move. This is an offense that's going to score a lot. Their defense still doesn't excite me. So I think Kirk Cousins is going to be a guy that you can use a weekly streamer and not feel too bad about. Pretty much the same thing with Derek Carr. At this point, it's pretty obvious that Derek Carr is having a quality year. I believe he leads the league in passing yardage so far. And he's getting all of his receivers involved. They obviously have Darren Waller. He gets a pretty quality matchup this week against the Los Angeles Chargers. In a game that I expect to be a shootout. So I think Derek Carr is a pretty viable streamer this week, and he's a guy that you can really use as a top 12 quarterback the rest of the season. He's going to be borderline there. I'm not saying he's an every week start, but he's definitely a guy I'd be happy to have as a backup. And then Sam Darnold, sort of the same thing. He's looked really good so far this year. I would be a little bit worried with the loss of Christian McCaffrey because that offense seemed to slow when McCaffrey got hurt on Thursday. But Sam Darnold's earned enough respect to be on lineups this week, and I do think that he's talented enough to perform on a fantasy level, and I don't think this Panthers defense is necessarily as good as they've shown, so I do think they're going to have to score a decent amount. Not having Christian McCaffrey might slow the offense overall, but will make them shift towards the passing game a little bit more. They've got really talented receivers, so Sam Darnold's worth a look. And then sort of the same idea here, we got Trey Lance and Justin Fields. I know Justin Fields looked horrible this last week, but it's hard to look good when you get sacked 9 times. And I think there's better days ahead for Justin Fields and Trey Lance when he eventually gets the role as a starter. Sort of like you've seen with Jalen Hurts so far this season. Jalen Hurts has not necessarily played well, but every single week he's been a top 12 fantasy quarterback just because of what he offers you on the ground. And I believe it's going to be the same story with Trey Lance and Justin Fields once they get involved. I prefer Trey Lance because I do think he's got a lot more upside once he takes over. But Justin Fields is worth holding on to. He's going to be a quality play once he's gets his feet under him. So just take a look at both those guys. You don't have to add them, but if you're not necessarily set at your quarterback position, I'd be looking to add one of those 2. So running back, first and most obvious, that is Chuba Hubbard. With Christian McCaffrey pulling his hamstring, missing a couple weeks in all likelihood, Chuba's a guy that really should step in. We know the Panthers use their running backs in the receiving game a ton. We saw Mike Davis perform really admirably last year, and I think it's just a position that offers so much value that over the next couple of weeks, Chuba is going to be a high-end RB2 for me. And in fantasy football, the name of the game, it's a weekly game. You've got to start stacking wins, especially if you're a 1-2 team, 0-3 team. I wouldn't judge you at all for spending a sizable chunk of fab on Chuba just because he's going to help you get a win or 2 these next couple of weeks. And it's time to start winning if you aren't already. And even if you are, it does not hurt to stack a couple more wins. So next, I've got Peyton Barber. He's got some value to me if Josh Jacobs misses more time. I don't know for sure if he's going to be more than just a 1-week wonder, but they seem pretty clear that they don't really trust Kenyon Drake with a full-time role. So Peyton Barber is a guy that's going to get a lot of work in games where Josh Jacobs misses. Josh Jacobs' toe is certainly not 100%, and I do think Peyton Barber will get at least one more start the rest of the season, and he's going to be potentially worth playing in that week. Another little speculative add, as we all know, running back is often very thin on the waiver wire, so it's hard to come up with good names here, but I think Marlon Mack is worth an add. The Colts and him have mutually agreed to seek a trade, and I think that there are potentially much better landing spots for Marlon Mack. There are teams in need of a running back. I would not be completely shocked if he ends up on the Niners, or even the Bucks, maybe. Regardless, Marlon Mack's shown that he's a talented running back, and if he can get a quality role in an offense, he's going to perform really admirably in fantasy. And it's really hard to find running backs on the waiver wire, so he's a guy that's got a shot to be valuable. And I would most certainly be looking to add him if you're really thin at the running back position. And then 2 more really speculative ads are J.J. Taylor and Ramondre Stevenson. With the injury to James White, there's a pretty large hole in that offense for a pass catching running back. JJ Taylor would be my first guess, the guy that gets it, but I do think Ramondre Stevenson's got a shot to be sort of a workhorse in this offense if they ever really give a running back that role. Damien Harris has looked good overall, but he's not going to be involved as a receiver, and JJ Taylor is not going to offer you very much on the ground. And Ramondre Stevenson seems like a guy that long term has the best shot of maintaining a really sizable role in this offense. Obviously, neither one of those guys are pickups to play this week, but it's just they're players I'd like to have and see what happens going forward. So the wide receiver position, my number one ad would be Tim Patrick. He's made this video 3 weeks in a row now, but he's exceeded 12 fantasy points in all 3 weeks. He scored a touchdown first couple of weeks, and he just scored 15 points on 5 receptions for 98 yards this last week. So in a game where the Broncos did not have to throw the ball very much, Tim Patrick's been very serviceable. They just lost KJ Hamler for the season, so should be even more targets for him in this offense. And he's just a talented receiver, and they're getting good quarterback play out of Teddy, so I want him on my roster. I think he's a guy that you can play in your flex going forward. Christian Kirk is another priority ad for me at wide receiver position. He's been absolutely on fire so far to start the season in an offense that just seems to be able to score every possession. Obviously, he's not the number one in this offense behind Hopkins, but I think there's going to be enough passing volume to go around. And I do think that he is the receiver in this offense I'd want to own outside of DeAndre Hopkins. I know Rondale Moore flashed in week 2, and AJ Green even had himself a good week this last week. But I think Christian Kirk's going to be the most consistent of those 3. And he's a guy that you can kind of play in your flex every week, and he's got the upside to really take you over the top each week. Another guy I'm looking to add is Kendrick Bourne. He really flashed this last week for the Patriots in a game where they were losing pretty heavily. I think you might see more of this going forward. I think the Patriots are realizing they're going to have to open up the offense a little bit. That's when Mac Jones has looked his best. And I don't think they're going to be ahead in very many games this season. I think they'll be a fringe 500 team, but they're going to have to pass the ball and they're going to have to score to win games. Kendrick Bourne's a nice little receiver. He was really good. Not really good, but he was most certainly serviceable in San Francisco the last couple of years. And he looked talented this last week. There's definitely room for one of these receivers in the Patriots offense to step up. And I do think Kendrick Bourne's got a shot to be that guy. So he's worth a look. Terrace Marshall is another guy I'm really excited about. Rookie for the Carolina Panthers. He's just a really big body, and he's a guy that I think could eventually lead this team in touchdowns during the second half of the season, receiving touchdowns, that is. The Panthers are not really actively using Robbie Anderson in their offense. So there's definitely a lot of targets. And then with the trade of Dan Arnold and the Christian McCaffrey injury, there's quite a few targets available in this offense right now. I think Terrace Marshall's even got a shot to be a quality play this week against the Cowboys. I wouldn't be excited playing him in my flex, but in deeper leagues, you can get away with it. And then Emmanuel Sanders, if he's on your waiver wire, he seems like a must add to me. Josh Allen and him seem to have a really quality connection working. He's got the air yards to back it up. He's getting a lot of deep shots down the field. And Emmanuel Sanders has proven that he's a professional wide receiver. He's really talented. And he's a guy that I think's got enough volume and a high octane enough offense that he's going to be usable the rest of the season. And the tight end position, this is actually one of the better weeks for the tight end position in recent memory. Tyler Conklin flashed against the Seahawks. I believe he had 6 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. He's a talented receiver, or he's talented as a receiver as a tight end position. He's pretty good with the ball in his hands after the catch. And I do think there's room for a third receiver in this offense behind Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Vikings have a history of using the tight end position with Kyle Rudolph. So I do think Tyler Conklin's got a shot to be a fringe top 12 option going forward. And obviously tight end's such a wasteland that you got to take advantage of any of those opportunities. Dawson Knox, pretty similar. I do think he's the 4th or 5th receiving option on this offense, but the tight end position is really brutal, and he's just definitely got a shot to score a touchdown in any given week in this offense. So he's worth a look. And then Dalton Schultz, it's hard with the Cowboys tight ends because him and Blake Jarwin kind of seem to like they're going to alternate every week. But Dalton Schultz did have the big week yesterday, and he's most certainly talented enough to get it done. So I think Dalton Schultz has at least got a shot to be valuable. So he's worth a look if you're thin at tight end. So with that, that'll do it for this week's waiver wire video. I'll be getting out the buy low and sell high video tomorrow, which has been a favorite amongst the subscribers. But if you did like this video, please be sure to give me a like. Smash that subscribe button, click the bell so you get notifications when I upload videos. Do a couple each week, 2 or 3. And you can feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. You can interact with me more there. I love answering any questions you guys have. If there were any players that I didn't mention in this video that you think deserved being in the video, please feel free to comment them. If you got questions, whether or not you think it's worth dropping a player for somebody, feel free to ask me. I'll get back to you. We all know that every little thing you do as a fantasy manager helps you win your league. Waivers is a big part of that. Trades as well. That's really what I enjoy the most throughout the season, is making my roster better each week. And that's what you got to do to win the league. So stick with me the rest of the season. We'll get you that championship. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you guys so much for watching.